Start recording. So welcome everyone to Career Chats. This session is talking about financial forensics and the career path that you can follow. Today our speaker is Branch Strickland. He is a manager at Ernst & Young, currently in the insurance and federal claims practice. And he's the former executive director of finance for the New York City Office of Emergency Management. I'm not going to go too far into it because Branch is going to tell you about his story. So please, Branch, take it away.
Great, and good morning, everyone. And I'm just thankful to be here, and thanks to Darian, who's also with EY, that helped arrange this. So hopefully, we'll get some good questions, and happy to share what I can. So just a little bit about me. Christina mentioned I'm currently a manager at EY in our insurance and federal claims practice. That is a group of us that has grown quite a bit that really focuses on post-disaster financial recovery for county governments. So we work a lot with FEMA. We're doing a lot of work with COVID-19, with hospital networks, and really making sure that when a disaster happens, those local governments get their financial recovery from FEMA, from HUD, from a wide range of federal sources, and so we help people go through that process, and through that, there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with that whenever you get money back from the federal government, and so we sort of come in and assist people through that process. So how I got to where I am today. Just going back through my history, I have probably a little bit more of a non-traditional way into EY. I went to a very, going all the way back to high school, a very remote high school in New Hampshire, a public school, where our graduation rate was not as high as I think folks would have wanted. I went to University of California, Santa Cruz, which is probably the furthest away from home I probably could have gotten. For a different experience. When I was there, I majored in both film production and politics, one being a passion, and one to kind of make sure I was sort of set up for a job post-graduation. And I had a friend that was interning at a local politician's office, the local state assembly member for Santa Cruz. We were working together at an ice cream store, and she said, listen, these people are great, they're friendly, do you want to come intern in the office with me? And I said, sure. So I was, started off really as an office manager intern in that local office. After I graduated, they said, hey, we've got this opening in our Sacramento state capitol office, do you want to apply for it? I did, worked, ended up graduating, getting a job with his office in the state capitol, was working there for a couple of years, and then worked on the assembly, state assembly budget committee as well. But I always knew, I was from the East Coast, lived in New York as a kid briefly in the 80s, and knew I wanted to come back to New York. So I was applying for grad schools, kind of around the area, and had gotten into NYU, the Wagner School of Public Service, and I accepted that job, or accepted that offer to go into grad school. At the same time, I was really looking for some employment so I could afford to be a student here, and so I was applying for jobs and got accepted in the development wing of the ACLU. And their headquarters downtown. So I was working, going to school full-time and working full-time, which was a challenge. I didn't really meet a lot of my students, my fellow students, because I would always be rushing off after class, to go do homework, then get up early to go to work. And it was a challenge to kind of balance both. And then, that was back in 2009. There was, obviously the recession back then. And so I was sort of knowing that we were at a nonprofit that really relied on donations, wanted to both get back into government. I really enjoyed working in the government sector, and so I was applying for jobs. Luckily found a job at New York City Office of Management and Budget, or New York City OMB, right before the recession hit and right before the ACLU was really starting to look at some staff reductions. And for those that don't know, OMB really manages the city's overall budget. I think it's like $80 billion, or it was at that point in time. So came in, at really the staff level, and was doing oversight of the city's education budget, which was about $21 billion, and really learned a ton there. And really, that's kind of where I think I took the skills I learned at NYU Wagner in public service and their program to really assist on reading legislation, understanding the impacts of the state and the Fed actions that would have on the city's budget, primarily with education. And that was also the time where we had the stimulus funds that came in that really supported education funding back in the recession. So it was a part of that. And then, after a couple of years there, about 2012, I was looking for new opportunities, saw a job posting for New York City Emergency Management for their director of finance. Applied for it, got accepted. This is about October 2012. And at the end of the month, my new former boss gave me a call on, I think it was a Friday. It was like, hey, there's a storm coming up the coast. We don't really know the impact of it. We're going to train you all about emergency management, but you might want to come in on Sunday, bring a sleeping bag, and we'll figure it out. So I ended up doing that. And my first day was setting up laptops for this logistics center and our emergency operations center. A background I had nothing in at that point in time. Slept in a warehouse for a week and was kind of driving around the city at that point where we didn't have power, and half of it was underwater. So that was my introduction to emergency management. From there, I spent the next 6.5 years as their was promoted to their executive director of finance. And really oversaw the operational aspect of that agency, both from, managing, it was a $70 million annual operating budget. They also had a capital budget of about $80 million, where we're trying to build out a new warehouse to replace the one that I slept in for a while. And then, we also oversaw, the city's emergency response to the Ebola crisis when we had the Ebola patient here, the Legionella outbreak in 2015 in the Bronx. There are a couple notable building explosions that have happened over the past couple of years. And so we were all involved in that emergency response. And so my job there really was to both, track costs when we were incurring costs as part of an emergency response, but also seeking reimbursement either from the city OMB, from the state, or from FEMA. And we were, when I left emergency management in 2019, we were still trying to fight with FEMA to get all the money back from Sandy. So was pretty much involved with every major city incident over the last couple of years. Then in 2019, I had a colleague of mine. We were volunteering on a nonprofit board that organizes an annual conference. He had been working in a local government in Florida and had gotten hired by this group at EY. And he reached out and said, listen, he's having a great time there. Do you want to come on board? I can put in a referral. And I said, sure. Happy to have that conversation. And so. That happened at the end of 2019 or end of 2018. And then in 2019, I came on board as a manager with EY's insurance and federal claims practice. And since then, I've been taking all the skills I learned both at OMB and emergency management and really applying that to, we have clients across the country. I've been primarily working in the Caribbean for one of our clients that's still recovering from Irma and Maria, the 2017 hurricanes. And so really taking those skills of what we learned from the city side and applying it to our clients. And as I mentioned, at the beginning, we are doing a lot of work with COVID-19 and really topical stuff that is across the country. So it's really been, I think everyone's been learning since, we haven't really had a pandemic like this ever. And we've had a sort of a national emergency where pretty much every state can get money back from FEMA, assuming that they can file the correct paperwork and go down that process. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. And it's been a journey. And you probably noticed from there, I don't have an accounting degree, despite working for an accounting firm, which has been, I think on my side, definitely a learning adventure where I've had to sort of catch up late in my career where folks, probably a lot of you, have these skills already. So that's been certainly a learning curve for me. But got a lot of supportive colleagues that show me the ropes. And I think a lot of what we do, inherently have just learned from my experience working with the city. So I guess with that, I'm happy to take questions or certainly talk about any more of that.
Great, thank you so much, Branch. So for those who do have questions, if you click the participants tab, you'll see a raise hand function. So if you'd like to turn your mic on and speak, just use the raise hand function. If not, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. I know there were some great ones that were emailed to me, so I hope you take this opportunity to ask. Don't be shy. Ariana? Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to raise my hand.
No, you did. I clicked it. Go ahead.
Oh, is it me or somebody else was actually talking? This is Ariana.
Ariana Holland raised her hand. So Ariana.
Okay. Hi. So actually, Branch, I'm a little bit kind of in your shoes. I wanted to go back to what you had mentioned about, the learning curve since you don't have an accounting degree. I'm actually at a nonprofit now, working in grants management, post-award. So not exactly what you do, but related. My bachelor's and my master's, they're not in accounting, not in finance, not business degrees at all. But I am interested in, transitioning from the nonprofit world to maybe, maybe private, maybe government at some point. So I was wondering if you think the learning curve is, too steep, and maybe I should, consider going back to school for a business degree if, this is the type of work that I want to pursue down the line, or do you think it's just something that, I just need to, get my foot in the door and just learn as I go?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think you and I sounds like we have a very similar background. I think for me, when I came on to EY, there was an option that I could try to go get a CPA, which for me at this point in my career, I think I've had my fill of applying for that degree or that program. But they did have some other options where I could, I am a certified fraud examiner now, which is another option that you could take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, folks, the education definitely is important, and they look for a basis of that. But I think when you are applying for jobs, in government as well, they also look at your cumulative, work history, and I think that's how I was able to leverage. Listen, I'm applying for a degree, or applying for a job in an accounting firm, one of the big four accounting firms, but I don't have an accounting background. I was able to point to, despite that, here are the places where I think I do have, work experience that is directly relevant to, what you're looking for. and I think, anyone that has, experience, hands-on experience in like grant management, you can certainly learn that in school, but to have that firsthand experience, is certainly priceless when people are looking at candidates to hire. So I wouldn't discount your current experience, because I think that paired with your education, gives you a leg up on probably those applications. So I guess all that being said, certainly, getting more education and more degrees is not a bad thing. But I think you can always, leverage your current experience, because that, along with your education can certainly make you stand out.
Okay, thank you. That makes me hopeful.
We have a few questions in the chat. Harold asked, I've been passionate about financials in the world of stock market as well. I am a current student of John Jay, where I'm studying criminology and law, and this is my last semester. My question is, with my background of criminology and law, can I get a job involved in the world of criminal finance, anything related to that?
I think, definitely within EY, I represent just a small sliver of what the firm does. I think we've got, 250,000, I think it's 250,000 employees worldwide. I think about 60,000 in the US alone. So our little division focused on just, post-disaster financial recovery is a very, very minor part of what the firm does. There is a whole forensics accounting team that we, are sort of very, we fall under, but are very separate from what they do. So I think a background in criminology and law, I think that certainly plugs into a lot of what I would say the majority of what the firm, at least within EY, focuses on. So I think that is absolutely, an area where there should be a lot of, opportunities. And I think particularly, when you do come into, this COVID environment, they like to call what we work on in disaster recovery counter-cyclical, where, when bad things happen is when folks hire us. And, it's unfortunate, but it's, that's why we're here, is to help people when, times are tough. And I think, in that criminology and law, right now there's a lot of things changing. There's a lot of federal money going out there to support not only governments, but businesses through the PPP loans. And all of that needs, oversight. And I think there is a large opportunity for folks with that type of background to really get plugged into that and hopefully get a job out of that.
Okay, we have another one from Maria. I have been a controller office manager for 10 years, and I'm studying for my certified fraud examiner credential. Find without an accounting degree, it may be hard to get into the field. Do you have any recommendations? I know you touched upon this, but for students who might be interested in getting that certified fraud examiner credential, can you talk a little bit about that experience and what that was like?
Yeah, I think I think I studied maybe too much. I definitely didn't want to fail and then have to take it again, since I was balancing studying for that and working at the same time. There is, I think there's an association that has a pretty nice study prep materials, which it sounds like you might be using, Maria. And I took it, I passed it on my first time. I think if you do use that study prep session, you just make sure that you pass your practice exams. I think some of the questions that I felt unsure about were some of the really technical ones on, when Congress passed this law in 1929, what code did it change? And that, I didn't have that experience of knowing that, and I had to sort of learn that as I was studying for it. But then the other questions, I think a lot of them I knew from my experience. I think you as a controller, I think a lot of that should come, sort of naturally to you, that, they do talk about, ways that you can find fraud or, evidence of fraud, and working in that with your experience, I felt from my background, I was able to really, I think, easily answer those questions. And then again, I think, if you don't have that accounting degree, you've got the CFE, the Certified Fraud Examiner, you've got that 10 years of experience. I mean, that pays its weight in gold right there. And I think, that's, you don't have to have an accounting degree to get a position in this field. It certainly helps, but having that experience and showing that you're able to do the work, that right there is certainly a leg up.
Great. How is the interview and hiring process like? What makes an applicant stand out?
Yeah, and I think I came into EY as what they call an experienced hire. There is a separate track, which I think the next question might be getting at, where they do go and hire folks, straight out of undergrad. So I think my entry into the firm is certainly a little different. I know, I would say the majority of folks that do come into EY, in particular, are either referrals or they're in the internship program, or they've been recruited, and each one of those tracks is certainly a different way into the firm. For me, I was part of the referral process, so I did. It was helpful to know someone who was already at EY because they were able to put my name into the system, which then generated a call from a recruiter who then asked me a little bit about my background, and then they realized that there could be a potential fit there, and then I went down the interview path of meeting. For me, as an experienced hire, I think I had something like 11 interviews, which was exhausting. 5 of them were back-to-back on one day, 30 minutes each, and just cycled me in and out of talking to folks. And at some point, I had forgotten which joke I had told to who, and I was kind of scared about repeating myself. But I think, definitely having, some type of connection, whether it is that referral, an internship, or being involved in the recruiting side of what the firm does, that certainly helps. That being said, they do hire a lot of folks right out of undergrad.
Great. This next question I'm going to kind of dissect a little bit. So for a student who maybe doesn't have hands-on practical experience in the field, maybe they had to work paid jobs and couldn't take, internships. How can they make themselves stand out to an employer and get their foot through the door, especially at a company like the Big Four? Would it be recommended to get out in the workforce and generate some of that experience now and then have those Big Four as like the dream job? Or is this something that you think, how can they market themselves without that practical experience to apply to one of these organizations?
Yep, and I think, to the first part, we do, hire entry-level accounting folks as staff members, and I've worked, both on with folks that were just, this was their, they started out as an intern, then they got hired, and this was really their first job right out of undergrad. So we do, that is definitely a track that we do hire. I would say to stand out. I think, definitely having some experience, it helps. It's not obviously, as we just mentioned, a requirement, but, I think if you are concerned that, your background, that you want to have more to it than just, your undergraduate experience or your graduate experience, it does certainly, having applicable real life, jobs and experiences that you can point to certainly can't hurt. I think that's how I managed it was, I was able to point to, working for the city for 10 years in a directly related field. While it wasn't accounting, I could still say, well, here are the things, here's what EY does, here's where I can, leverage my experience and be a productive member of the firm, even though I don't have an accounting degree. Like, I managed an agency budget, I helped out with the stimulus funding back in 2009. There's COVID funding going out right now, it's applicable. So I think, if you're able to get relevant experience that you can then tie to the positions that you're applying for, certainly doesn't hurt at all.
Great. Let's see. I have a few more questions here. What advice would you give to people who are not sure what specific route in financial forensics to take?
I mean, I think, there are definitely a lot of options, within forensics. And I guess my advice would just be, if there is one that you're really passionate about, like if this is the career path that you're going down, and there's one particular aspect that really excites you and makes you, wake up and ready to go into the day, that type of attitude, from folks that I work with, like you definitely know who is excited about the work, and who is just punching numbers and trying to get to 5 o'clock and having that, that happy hour. And so I would definitely, if you're looking and you've got a wealth of options, just find out which one excites you. Like for me, I didn't think I would be interested in disaster recovery. I sort of fell into it by accident by applying for that one job. Turns out I loved it. I was always the kid playing SimCity and then being like, well, here comes an earthquake, here comes a meteor, here comes Godzilla. And when I found, just coincidentally me working in that field, I realized that was my passion. And so I was able to take that with me. And then, I did have a point where I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go after emergency management. Did I want to stay in city government and really double down on my city experience, or did I want to go with this disaster cost recovery and really bring that experience to multiple clients working for a private firm? And I had to think about which one excited me more, and I went with the disaster cost recovery. I thought it was more exciting, I was more passionate about it, and it opened up more opportunities for professional growth and career growth. I guess that would be my advice: is go after which one I think makes you the most happy and you're more passionate about, and then try to pair that with career opportunities that are out there.
Careful, baby. Please don't do that, because this is already broken, so you can't keep pushing the council.
Okay. So we have a few more questions, and I'm going to paraphrase this one, but would you say, what were any drawbacks in your career journey? Like any challenges you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, that's a great question. And sorry if you hear, I guess there's construction happening near me. So I think in terms of challenges, I think particularly in government, and it happens in the private sector as well, that you might have some coming in as a fresh a hire, you've got all these great ideas, you want to change the world, and then you immediately hit bureaucracy and red tape, and there are these policies and procedures that are in there that really can stop the most well-intentioned folks coming in to try to change things. And I think that was always a challenge to me, particularly working in government, where there's plenty of red tape. And I saw colleagues of mine who came in, and wanted to really revamp how government worked, wanted to make all these changes, and just got so disillusioned by red tape and just being told, no, like we can't do that. And I think, I definitely hit that wall as well. And, it was discouraging at some point, at many points where you had all these great ideas of like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why do we do it this way? And the answer was always, that's just how we've always done it. And that's how we're going to continue doing it. The way I got around that really was to continually, I think people often, when you come with a great idea that's going to involve work for other people to get it to change, is to not let that great idea of yours kind of die. Folks will just say, come back at me next year, we'll talk about it later. And often, when you have these great ideas, you get discouraged and kind of go back into the way things were. I've always felt that if you continuously follow up with folks, keep on pushing it, don't let it die. That helps you get through, a lot of that roadblock. And I think, there is a lot of potential for change, whether it's, even within a private firm like EY, we've had a lot of great initiatives that have come out, but it does take, that time, that effort to really push people to implement that change. So I think, that's always been a challenge of mine, is like wanting to come in, make things better, and then just getting stuck with, red tape and getting things stalled out, or folks just telling you no. And some things can't happen, and that's just the way it is. But I think a lot of times you can fight through that and really make some positive change where you're working.
Great. Excuse me. We have a question from Kavan. Is an economics degree useful in getting an accounting job?
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly have experience with accounting degrees. I could definitely see how they would be useful. I think right now there's so much change going on, economically with the country, and with EY in particular. Like, we have clients that range from corporate clients, some major Fortune 500 companies that we advise and support, to that state, local, federal level that I work on. And we do have, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't exactly remember the name of all of the wings of what we do at NY, because it is such a large firm. But there are wings of folks that come in and, outside of accounting, tell companies and governments, like, here's how you can rearrange how you do your work, how you organize your business, structure your business. And I think economics plays into that, in every function. Needs to know, what the economic prospect is, the near term, the far term, so that they know, if they're going to restructure, is this going to, are they going to be in firm financial footing? Same thing with the government. They like to model, economic pictures and see how much tax revenue that's coming in. So I would say absolutely. I think that is a really interesting and strong pairing, because you would be able to bring that type of economics expertise into accounting, and they really do play well off one another.
Great. For students who might be interested in getting involved outside of John Jay, they have professional associations like that, Fraud Examiner Association, but are there any other professional development or associations you would recommend for students to join now while they're still in school? As some professionals may know, it costs more to join these associations after you graduate. But a lot of associations offer student memberships. Are there any organizations you're a part of, or that you would recommend, or things that are popular in industry that our students can start exploring now while they're still in school?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am part of the Certified Fraud Examiner Association. I think that one's been pretty helpful. They have a lot of great information that they send out on a regular basis, and a lot of information on the website, and folks are constantly sharing tips and tricks. But I think there are countless associations. I think a lot of them are valuable. I know a lot of them do cost money to join. When you do join a firm, similar to EY, often that company will pay for those memberships, because they do find value in their employees having those credentials or those licenses. So I would absolutely encourage folks to get that. And I think really a lot of that does come from, a lot of the networking aspects of it. As I mentioned before, I think the majority of folks that do come into EY, particularly at the experience level, come through a referral. And, if you're able to go into that, whatever particular association it is that you want to be a part of, and, there are people in there that either work at EY work at a firm that you want to go after, that absolutely is a way into, network with those folks and, could lead to a referral or a conversation about potential jobs. So I think that is a great area if you are able to take full advantage of it. And then, I think if there are other nonprofit associations you want to be a part of, that's how I got into EY. I was part of a nonprofit board that organized a emergency management conference that happened every year, and I got to know a colleague who then got hired by EY. So I think the more you're able to network, the more you'll find people at that firm over in that county government working for that state that you can then reach out to if you are looking for either a job or a career change, and they can either give you advice. I've had a lot of conversations with folks looking to join EY or join city government here in New York that either found me through an association or from just working together. So I think the more you can network, I think the more that gives you options to reach out to folks when you're looking for jobs or a new career.
Thank you. So now the big question everyone's asking is about internships. So we know EY has internships, and based on some of my research and knowledge of industry, the big four accounting firms, financial institutions, banks, they recruit earlier and earlier for these internships, most of which have competitive summer internships. What advice would you have for students who are interested in applying now? I did see a question saying, I'm taking an accounting class now. Should I apply now or after I take the class? How can our students make themselves competitive to stand out for these particular internship opportunities that are available on the EY website?
Great plug. I know they are going earlier. I think they're already mostly filling or have filled the 2021 internship for the summer. So I think, if you are interested, the earlier the better, since I think, as Christina was saying, they do start filling these up probably earlier than you would expect, given that it's October, and I think they're already filling next summer's internships. I would probably, apply as early as you can. And then, when you're doing your resume, I think, and I've looked at a lot of people's resumes, and I think this goes for outside of internships, but also just sort of life in general. You definitely want to have someone read your resume. I've had ones of mine go out where I've had typos, or like I had copy pasted sentences that didn't make sense, or the font was different and I didn't catch it. And I can't stress that enough. You don't want your first impression on your resume to be a typo or something that doesn't make sense, or just the formatting's weird, since that is really your first impression. And I know I've looked at a lot of resumes that have come into me for people trying to apply for jobs either with the city or with EY, and it's hard not to notice those things, and it's unfortunate, but when you get hundreds of resumes, you kind of do have to start filtering those out the best you can. And so I would say definitely take a look at that, have someone else read it, make sure the formatting's on point, but also try to, and I think there was a book, I think it's called How Google Works. I read it. I definitely recommend reading it. It did talk about people, that have been applying to Google. Their founders wrote, what they look for in resumes. And I thought they had a really interesting formula, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but basically it was, my outcome did, achieved X because I did Y, and that had a savings or a monetary impact of another number. And basically, I think as you're putting down on your resume, if you do have, that volunteer experience, other prior work experience, you want to be very clear, what did you do that made change? I think everyone can say, generally what you did at a job, but I think when you're looking at a resume, to see if someone's a good fit, you want to know, well, what exactly did you do at that job that someone would go and say, well, that's really interesting. Like, tell me more about how you changed this protocol, how you increased profit or whatever have you is the appropriate experience. Separate from that, I think I always, when I've been applying for jobs, rewrite an entire cover letter. And you definitely notice when you're looking at those, if they do require a cover letter, when someone's just copy pasted. They might say, when I was working for the city, they'd say, hey, I'm interested in working at your company. I'm like, well, we're not a company, we're a government. So you're clearly not paying attention to who you're applying to. And it was, you could very easily tell who was just changing the name on who it was to and not going through the care of like changing, why you wanted to work there and, parts of your experience that were directly relatable to it. So that was a long-winded explanation of going back to internships, but I do think it is important because these things are noticed both in a cover letter and your resumes when you start really developing those and sending those out.
Great, and I think that's a great segue to a final question. Randy, you said it before, and I wanna say it correctly, but it was like, what is was it the favorite part of your job, or what? Gosh, I'm gonna butcher it.
Okay, I'll pitch in here. So what's your best day at the office? Or what really makes you happy and look forward to going to work? And what's your worst day?
I think I'll start with the worst day first so that we end on a good note. I think, I know for me, I've had some, stressful days just working in like disaster recovery, and that just comes with the nature of it. I think, in terms of a worst day, it probably is when I don't feel confident that I know what I should be doing, or I feel insecure. And I know for me, as we talked before, I don't have an accounting degree. I'm in this firm, this role where I'm surrounded by people that have CPAs that know what they're doing. And I look at them and I'm just like, wow, like I would have never have thought to look at it this way. And I think, that's always a challenge for me to not compare myself to, my colleagues that have that experience, but remind myself that, I'm here because I have this other great experience, and that's why, why I'm here and why I'm working in a big four firm. So I think, that is just a little personal side of it. And, we've, in terms of like other bad days, I've had, like I was saying before, initiatives that I've been trying to push, this is mostly in government where it's a little bit harder, but, where you just hit roadblocks and you hit folks that just don't want to do it. And there's no rhyme or reason. And it really is just trying to understand their viewpoint and trying to get around it. And, I think when you get that initial, like, no, we don't want to take this cost savings initiative or this efficiency initiative, despite your best presentation or your best evidence, that's always discouraging. And I think it's at that point, making sure you don't let that despair or discouragement get to you and drop it. Because there are ways you can always go around it or tailor your approach. I think in terms of a better day or a good day at the office, and this might be particular to disaster cost recovery work that we do, but we work with folks that really have probably at the worst point of their lives, and I went through it, working in the city immediately post Sandy, where you're just like, this, good God, like everything is on fire, everything's underwater. You don't know how to move forward on anything. And, being able to come in and say, like, don't worry, we're here to help. And just knowing that, my day-to-day work is benefiting, community or folks that have really been, hurt or financially struggling, as a result of a disaster. I think that's a good day is when I can, at the end of the day say, today I've made progress in terms of helping other people. and helping someone recover from a disaster. I think that is a good day to me, and that's why I particularly love this insurance and federal claims division. Coming from a life, pretty much of working in government, this is my first private sector job, and I always told myself I wanted to go into the private sector if I could do good in the world. And I think this is like a great nexus of the freedom, the flexibility of the private sector, but also making sure that the work we're doing is benefiting others, and it's really rewarding. So I would say that would be a good day, and those days happen a lot. So that's good.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your time and your story with us. Thank you, Randy, for organizing this, and Darian from EY for also, facilitating this. And thank you to the students who attended. As I mentioned, this session was recorded and will be posted on the John Jay College Career Center's website under Career Chats. And for any students who are interested in making an appointment with the Career Center, you can do that through John Jay Careers Online. I will drop a link in the chat. But for now, thank you guys for your time. Thank you, Branch. I'm going to end this recording.